First, I would like us to kind of look and describe and explain, I think, how do we actually contribute to business outcomes? How do we actually produce any impact with our design work? How exactly do we actually move the needle if it needs to be done? What's really important about this is to understand in this entire universe of business, where are we exactly? So we want to influence all those things, and we can, with good design, we can. But we need to understand where are we in this universe? Now, there was this incredible talk that Paul Adams has given about the end of navel gazing. And I highly encourage you to actually look at the talk, because what he was speaking about is basically a more realistic view of design and the role of design in organizations small and large, right? And the point that he was trying to make is that most of the time when you go on LinkedIn and you go on Twitter and you go on all the different places, we often have these conversations that are very much circled around something like this, like the Venn diagram where we put together business, technology, design, and in the heart of it all is UX. UX is the heart of everything. It's the one thing that drives everything. Now, that's, in my experience, not true at all. And this is exactly what Paul is suggesting, right? Because this is a wrong vision of reality, which is just not true in most organizations, most companies. We might want to see it differently, right? But this is just not true, because most of the time, design is not the center of the universe, right? Design is one of the many different satellites that exist in any company or any organizations, right? And what you find is that design is unlike everything else, right? Usually does not have any KPIs, right? You kind of just design your screen and you launch it and then you hope for the best. But for example, when you look into sales and marketing, they clearly have their KPIs. They will be measured, their success will be measured by how well they actually achieve their goals, right? The same goes for things like finance and recruiting and support. Support has very clear KPIs, the number of tickets that are going to be processed on a given month, right? Or a given week or per person. Very clear KPIs there as well. Even engineering has some KPIs, right? That would usually be performance, scalability, infrastructure, those kind of things, like 99.9% time being up, right? Or something like the Lighthouse score in web performance. Many teams have the KPIs. Now, we are one of the satellites, one of the many satellites. And what we think the reality is like is very UX-centric. And I'm not meaning it in a good way. I mean it in a way that we often look at the business through the lens of what we are doing. So it is not uncommon, for example, to have this kind of perspective, right? So if you get to leadership, this changes, right? But before you do that, you realize that, oh, well, marketing, well, they basically take what we create and announce it, right? Sales, well, they always follow bad practices. They overpromise. They kind of claim wrong things. They push advertising. They push marketing. They push all of that stuff. We want to protect our users. We want to protect our customers. We care about them. And they just want the worst of it all, right? But they have good parties, right? That might be something that we're thinking. Support, well, they work somewhere in the other building. It's a very boring job. Nobody, we don't want to even, talk about that. Finances, well, they basically just cover my expenses and pay my salary, right? HR, well, we don't want to deal with HR. It's people problems. Hope we will never meet, right? This is often a view that we kind of have about the organization around us, right? Which I think in many ways is really wrong. It also is kind of prejudicial in some way, because we're kind of taking our role as maybe even a bit more important than it is. Because again, design is one of the many satellites. And actually, if you think about this, going all the tangent, if you think about this, there is a good reason why for a given company, there is maybe one designer, 6 developers, 20 marketing people, and maybe 30 sales. Now, you might think, oh, this is like an ongoing joke that's happening in the industry. But, well, if you think about this, the reason why it's done this way is because it reflects the priorities in a given company or business. Sometimes you have more focus on engineering, so you have more engineers. Sometimes you have more focus on sales, so you have sales. Sometimes you have more focus on design, and you end up with a huge group of designers, right? But the organization and the way it's working, the way it's built and constructed, reflects the priorities. In other words, if you are the only designer on the team, that clearly reflects the priority and the focus on design in that environment, right? That means that if you are one of 500 people who happens to be a designer, that is not a design-driven company. right? And this is why we should not overestimate our role in some organizations, right? Because what happens is, design is just one of the satellites, and of course, marketing and sales are way more important because they deliver revenue, right? And of course, other things like, again, support are important because they solve real problems, right? Design, we need to speak about design in the terms that business understands and with KPIs that business also understands, right? And that's something that we may be missing every now and again. And by the way, very often, and this is what Paul is arguing, very often when we speak about design, we speak about us being the voice of the customer. But at the same time, we might be running usability testing maybe once every 3 to 4 months, right? But sales, especially when you're looking in this environment like subscription-based environment today, right? Where it's important not just to make a sale for sales, it's important to maintain a relationship, especially if you're in B2B, right? It's important to actually have a customer success team. Now, they speak to customers all the time. Not us, they speak to customers all the time. And I'm wondering at this point, think about it. Do you have at least a single friend from sales team? Maybe, if you're lucky. Most of the time it's not the case. The first thing I want to recommend to you, look at org charts. Second, look at sales and be friends with sales. Because if you do research, for example, and you don't have access to users, which can be very common in B2B, right? You can at least maybe ask a question or convey a question via sales or via marketing, right? Because again, they might be speaking to customers more than you do, right? Or at least as they have this conversation, because again, it's a customer success team potentially, right? You might be actually conveying the question and getting an answer. It's extremely variable, right? So think about that. Every now and again, this would be a very, very useful strategy.